Today, we will be discussing, in two separate videos, Renaissance art. I first want to go over and review what is the Renaissance. Remember, Renaissance means rebirth. And it was a time period in Europe that saw the rebirth of the classics, Greek and Roman works, and also a rebirth in learning and education. But the Renaissance also sparked new ideas, new ways of art, new thinking in science, and new thinking in religion. So the Renaissance really was a drastic change that started in Italy, which is ironically the home of the Catholic Church, and the Renaissance then spread throughout the rest of Europe. This movement it's estimated to have lasted between 1300 and 1600 AD. So let's talk about Renaissance art. And so this is what I want you to do. I want you to watch this video and answer the questions that pop up throughout. And then once this video is over, I want you to go to Google Classroom and fill out the notes for this particular discussion. Once you are done with that, then go on to discussion 2, which talks about specific artwork. This is going to talk about the differences between the Middle Age art and the Renaissance art. So we're going to Renaissance art compared to Middle Age art. So Middle Age art was very unrealistic and not lifelike. Renaissance art was very realistic and lifelike, and they actually focused on facial expressions, not just a generic look on people's faces, but in their art, they gave them expressions. Middle Age art was owned as property of the church. All the art during the Middle Ages was commissioned or paid for by the church. Remember, at that time, serfs, do you think they really cared about art when they were just trying to survive the Black Death or survive the constant conflict between different manners, or all this stuff was going on. So art was a focus of the church. When in the Renaissance, not only was art enjoyed by more people, but art was also the property of those who created it. So Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Raphael and all these people, they owned most of their art. In the Middle Ages, there are many concepts in art, and the Middle Ages lacked them all. There was no balance, no proportion, no perspective in Middle Age art. When Renaissance art had all of that. It had balance, it had proportion, and it had perspective. That was Renaissance art. Renaissance art also studied the body. In the Middle Age art, there was no nudity. In the Renaissance art, that's why I have to pick and choose which art that we actually do and study about. Because Renaissance art was focused on the body, and nudity was common in Renaissance art. It was a form of beauty for them. In Middle Age art, if you see religious paintings, which most of them were at the time, they have halos around their heads. Is that realistic? Do you see people who are religious walking around with halos? Or do you think someone like Jesus, who they painted a lot of, had a halo around his head? So not really lifelike, not really realistic. And Renaissance art, they actually portrayed earthly people. Earthly people were subjects of Renaissance art. They had religious also, so that's what both of them have in common. They both have religious topics, but Renaissance art also had earthly, everyday topics and people, which is very interesting and a new concept, a departure from the Middle Ages. Both are ways of expressing oneself, forms of expression, and both types of art are admired today and looked at as modern day classics and what artists still use today to learn from and to work off of. So very interesting, especially the Renaissance, those constant themes of balance, proportion, perspective are still used by artists today. So let's look at this example. Look at the one on the right side of the page. That is Middle Age art. There is no perspective. In perspective, if you look at the painting, it's just flat. It looks like it's on a piece of paper. The halo around the person's head and the baby. Okay, look at that baby. Have you ever seen a baby look like that? If you have, send me a picture of it because it looks like a little human, a little adult human. But if you look at the Renaissance on the left, okay, realistic, almost three-dimensional. Perspective, if you look as the painting goes in the back, things fade away just like in real life. There are no halos on Mary and the baby Jesus like there is in the Middle Age. So do we see the differences between the two types of paintings? So here's some examples. Is this Middle Age art or Renaissance art? It is Middle Age art. Again, flat, halos around Mary and Jesus's heads, baby Jesus's head. Look at the baby again. Look at the angels. There's very basic paintings. What type of painting is this? It is Renaissance art. Very realistic looking woman. Perspective. As you look into the background, the mountains kind of fade away. Three-dimensional looking. Very detailed face. Even the animal that she is holding is detailed. I mean, even look at the cheeks, her rosy cheeks, the detail added to it. Renaissance art. What about this one? If you said Middle Age art, you would be correct. Right? The same concepts, not really realistic, almost cartoonish. Like you would see this on Nickelodeon. Well, I hope not because the baby's creepy. But something like this on Nickelodeon. Okay, not a lot of detail. Look at the background. Very basic background. And then what type of art is this? If you said Renaissance art, you would be correct. Very realistic. It almost looks like you took your iPhone and took a picture of the Pope and the two bishops beside him. Very realistic. Detail, the background perspective, it fades away. Three-dimensional looking. I mean, look at this. the book. Looks like there's pages. You can see the wrinkles in the Pope's outfit, the expression on his face as if he's thinking about something or looking in the distance. And then you see this bishop in the back looking at a different way. Very realistic. So do we see the differences between the two types of art, the Middle Age art and the Renaissance art? Are we all good with that? If so, this video is going to end. Go to Google Classroom and complete the Venn diagram comparing Middle Age art to Renaissance art, and then come back for another discussion on who were some of the most famous and successful Renaissance artists.